My parents always favored my brother, so I moved out. Now, 6 months later, they're begging me to come back, but I discover a photo album that reveals a shocking truth about my childhood. My name is Emma, and I'm 19. I have a younger brother named Noah, who's 16. For as long as I can remember, my family dynamic has always been strained, but recent events have pushed me to my breaking point. To explain, I need to take you back a little. My parents, Thomas, 45, and Sarah, 43, met in college and got married shortly after. They always dreamed of having a big family, but struggled with fertility issues for years. When I was finally born, they were over the moon, but I was a difficult baby. I had colic, cried incessantly, and had frequent stomach issues. My mom often jokes that she hardly slept during the first 6 months of my life, which, in hindsight, I think contributed to her frustration. As I got older, it became clear that I wasn't the child my parents had envisioned. I was introverted, sensitive, and preferred to read or draw, rather than engage in sports or social clubs. My parents didn't know what to do with me. They would push me to try things like soccer and drama club, but when I didn't excel or enjoy them, they'd get frustrated. When I was 7, my mom unexpectedly got pregnant with Noah. It was a difficult pregnancy, and she had to be on bed rest for most of the final trimester. I remember feeling a little neglected, as my dad was busy caring for her, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. Noah's arrival was a huge turning point. He was a cheerful, easy baby who barely cried, and my parents were absolutely smitten with him. The contrast between us was stark from the beginning, and as Noah grew older, it was clear that he was everything they had hoped for. He was outgoing, athletic, and always the top student in his class. By the time I turned 12, I started struggling with anxiety and depression. I would have panic attacks before school and often felt overwhelmed in social situations. My parents didn't understand. They told me to stop being so dramatic and snap out of it. Meanwhile, Noah was thriving. He was a natural athlete, joining every sports team and excelling. He was surrounded by friends and constantly going to parties or sleepovers. My parents beamed with pride at everything he accomplished, while I felt like I was being left behind. At 14, things got even more complicated when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, a chronic pain condition. Suddenly, I was in and out of doctors' offices, needing accommodations at school, and taking medications. My parents acted like it was an inconvenience. They'd complain about taking me to specialists or picking up my prescriptions. One moment I'll never forget was when I had a particularly bad flare-up on the same day as one of Noah's soccer games. I was in so much pain I could barely move, but my parents insisted on going to the game anyway, leaving me alone with painkillers and a frozen dinner. I spent the evening lying in bed, listening to the phone ring, probably my grandmother checking in, feeling completely abandoned. As high school continued, the favoritism became more obvious. For my 16th birthday, my parents gave me a $50 gift card to a bookstore. For Noah's 16th birthday a few months ago, they bought him a brand new car. When I tried to bring up how unfair this felt, they told me I was being ungrateful and that Noah deserved it because of his good grades and extracurricular activities. This favoritism started to affect my relationship with Noah as well. We used to be close when we were younger. I'd help him with his homework and we'd read together before bed. But as time went on, the divide between us grew. While he never intentionally rubbed his accomplishments in my face, the difference in how we were treated was always there, creating an unspoken tension between us. Throughout all of this, my best friend, Lily, was my rock. We met in middle school when we were paired up for a science project, and from the very start, Lily didn't think I was weird or too quiet. She accepted me for who I was, and always stood up for me when others didn't. Her family became like my second home. Her parents, Mark and Karen, frequently invited me over for family dinners or weekend getaways, showing genuine interest in my life, my art, and my mental health. It was with them that I first understood what unconditional support felt like. The breaking point came last month. I overheard my parents discussing college plans for Noah. They were planning elaborate campus tours across the country and were going to help him pay for whatever school he wanted to attend. Meanwhile, when I started college this year, my parents told me I was on my own for tuition and suggested I just go to community college to save money. That was the final straw. I confronted them, and it turned into a huge argument. I told them everything, the way they'd always favored Noah, how they dismissed my mental and physical health struggles, and how their treatment of me over the years had hurt me. Instead of listening, my mom told me I was being dramatic again, and my dad said, "Well, maybe if you'd tried harder like Noah, we'd help you too." That comment broke me. Years of trying to shrink myself to meet their expectations came crashing down in that moment. I realized that nothing I did would ever be good enough for them. I packed up my things that night and went to stay with Lily. Her family welcomed me with open arms, no questions asked. When I explained the situation through tears, Mark and Karen said I could stay with them as long as I needed. Lily hugged me tight and said, "You're family now, you know that, right?" It's been a week now, and my parents have barely reached out. They sent one text asking when I was done with my tantrum and when I'd be coming home. I told them I wasn't coming back. My mom flipped out, saying I was tearing the family apart and being selfish. She told me I needed to think about how this was affecting Noah. I do feel conflicted. Part of me feels guilty for leaving my family, especially because I worry about Noah and how this might affect him, but another part of me feels a huge sense of relief. For the first time in years, I can breathe. Lily and her family have been so supportive, encouraging me to focus on my mental health and studies. Yesterday, Noah texted me asking me to come home. He said he misses me, and that our parents are really upset. I miss him too, but I don't think I can go back to that house. The thought of returning makes me feel panicked and trapped. Am I the jerk for moving out and refusing to go back? Should I have tried harder to work things out with my parents? I feel like I've tried for years to fit into their mold, but it's never been enough. Is it wrong to finally put myself first? Edit: Wow, I didn't expect this post to get so much attention. Thank you to everyone for your supportive comments and advice. To answer a few common questions, yes, I am financially independent. I work part-time at a local bookstore and have some savings. Lily's family is helping me out for now, but I'm looking for ways to support myself long-term. It's been about a month since my original post, and a lot has happened, so I wanted to give an update. First, I want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support and advice. It really helped me feel more confident in my decision to move out. Shortly after my post, my parents showed up at Lily's house unannounced. They demanded to speak with me, but Lily's parents refused to let them in without my consent. I decided to go outside and talk to them for a bit. My mom was crying, and my dad looked furious. They accused me of being ungrateful and said I was hurting Noah by abandoning him. When I tried to calmly explain my feelings again, my dad interrupted and said, "We've given you everything, and this is how you repay us. By running away and airing our family's dirty laundry online." I was shocked that they had somehow found my Reddit post. Apparently, Noah had seen it and showed them. I felt betrayed that he'd done that, but I realized later that he probably thought he was helping in some way. The conversation quickly devolved into them yelling at me on Lily's front lawn. They brought up every perceived slight and failure of mine from childhood. My mom said, "We tried so hard with you, Emma. We took you to all those doctors, we bought you all those art supplies. Why couldn't you just be normal like Noah?" That comment hit harder than I expected. It dredged up memories of the many times they compared me to Noah or other normal kids. I remembered a specific incident in middle school when I had a panic attack before a school presentation. Instead of comforting me, my dad had said, "Why can't you be more like Noah? He never gets nervous about these things." The conversation continued to escalate, alternating between guilt-tripping and threats. They told me that if I didn't come home immediately, I shouldn't bother coming back at all. My dad even said, "If this is how you want to act, don't expect any help from us in the future. No more health insurance, no more phone plan, you're on your own." I stood my ground, even though I was shaking inside. I told them I wasn't coming back, and the look of shock on their faces was almost comical. I don't think they ever expected me to stand up to them like this. After they left, I broke down in tears. Lily and her family were incredibly supportive. Her mom made me tea and sat with me while I cried it out. Her dad even started looking into resources for independent students at my college. A few days later, Noah called me, crying. He apologized for showing our parents the post and said he didn't realize how bad things had gotten between us. We had a long conversation about our childhood and how differently our parents treated us. It was eye-opening for him. He admitted that he'd always felt pressure to be perfect because of how our parents praised him. He said he was sometimes jealous of me because I seemed stronger for standing up to them. I was surprised to hear that, since I always thought of myself as weak compared to him. He also told me about a time when he was 12 and failed a math test. Our parents had acted so disappointed, making him feel like he had completely failed them. That night, I cried myself to sleep. I had always thought that Noah had the perfect life, but it turned out he'd been struggling too, just in different ways. We agreed that we would work on rebuilding our relationship, but this time, separate from our parents' influence. It won't be easy, but I'm glad we're both willing to try. As for my parents, their behavior has been alternating between love bombing and guilt tripping. They've been sending me messages saying they miss me and want to work things out. But when I don't immediately agree to come home, they switch to accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. One day, my mom will text saying, "Sweetie, we miss you so much. Please come home, we can work this out as a family." The next day, my dad will send an angry message saying, "You're breaking your mother's heart. How can you be so selfish?" It's exhausting and confusing. Part of me still yearns for their approval and love. There are moments when I'm tempted to give in, to go back home and try to be the daughter they want, but then I remember how much happier and calmer I've felt since leaving. I'm standing firm in my decision to stay away. Lily's family has generously offered for me to stay with them through the summer while I figure out my next steps. It's been a huge relief to have their support, and for now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I've been looking for a better paying job so I can hopefully get my own place soon. It's been a difficult month emotionally, but I feel stronger every day. I've been focusing on my mental health, my studies, and building a support system outside of my family. Journaling has helped me process my feelings, and I've been spending more time on my art. There are still tough days where I doubt myself or feel pangs of guilt, but overall, I know I made the right decision for my well-being. Learning to set boundaries and prioritize my own needs hasn't been easy, but it's worth it. Thank you all again for the encouragement and advice. It means more than you know to have so much support during this challenging time. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and things have continued to be complicated with my family, though I'm doing much better personally. The biggest development is that I've moved into my own apartment. It's tiny, and the neighborhood isn't great, but it's mine. I found a job at a local art supply store, which, along with my savings and some help from Lily's family, allows me to cover rent and basic expenses. It's tight, but I'm managing. Moving day was bittersweet. Lily and her family helped me move in, and saying goodbye to them was harder than I expected. They've been my rock through these last few months, providing support and stability when I needed it most. Lily's mom, Karen, got teary-eyed as she hugged me goodbye. "You know you'll always have a home with us," she said, and it meant the world to me. My parents' behavior, meanwhile, has remained erratic. They go through cycles of ignoring me completely and then bombarding me with messages. Last month, they showed up at my apartment after Noah accidentally let slip where I was living during one of our phone calls. They tried to force their way in, insisting they just wanted to talk. I refused to let them in, but they wouldn't leave. My dad started yelling about how I was ruining the family and how I owed them for everything they'd done for me, while my mom was crying, begging me to come home. The whole situation was awful. I finally had to threaten to call the police before they left, though not before my dad shouted that I was dead to them. A week later, my mom sent me a long email apologizing and begging me to come home. She wrote about how much she missed me and how empty the house felt without me. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull to give in, to try one more time to be the daughter they wanted. But then I remembered the years of walking on eggshells, never feeling good enough. When I didn't respond to her email, she reverted to calling me ungrateful and selfish. Noah and I have been talking more regularly. He's starting to see our parents' toxic behavior more clearly now. He told me that things at home have been tense, with our parents constantly fighting and blaming each other for my leaving. Last week, he called me in tears after an argument with them about his college plans. He wants to study art, but they're pressuring him to pursue something practical like business or law. They keep saying they don't want me to end up like you, he said, his voice breaking. But I don't want to live my life just to please them anymore. I felt a pang of guilt knowing that Noah is now bearing the brunt of their behavior, but I also know it's not my fault. I've been encouraging him to focus on his own mental health and to make choices for his future, not theirs. We're planning for him to visit me at my new place soon away from their influence so we can spend time together and talk more openly. My relationship with Lily and her family remains strong. They check in on me often, and last weekend, they surprised me by showing up at my apartment with home-cooked meals to stock my freezer. It was such a thoughtful gesture and reminded me that family isn't always about blood. I've also reconnected with my grandmother, my dad's mom. She reached out after hearing about the situation from my parents. At first, I was wary, expecting her to try and convince me to go back home, but she surprised me. I always worried about how they treated you, she said. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Her support has been a welcome surprise. She calls me regularly to check in and has even offered financial help if I ever need it. Having an adult family member validate my experiences and decisions means so much to me. Overall, I'm proud of the progress I've made. There are still hard days when I doubt myself or feel guilty, but I mostly feel relieved and hopeful for the future. Setting boundaries and prioritizing my well-being hasn't been easy, but it's worth it. It's been 6 months since my last update, and life has settled into a new normal. I'm still in my small apartment and working at the art supply store. It's not always easy, but I'm managing. I've even started taking a few extra classes at community college to work toward a degree in graphic design. The situation with my parents remains tense, but my parents have mostly stopped trying to contact me directly, but they still send messages through Noah or other relatives from time to time. These messages swing between guilt trips and angry accusations, but I've gotten better at not engaging with them. Last month, something happened that really shook me. It was my birthday, and I received a package in the mail. Inside was a photo album filled with pictures of me and my family from when I was younger. There was also a card that read, "Remember when things were good? Come home, and we can be a family again." At first, I was touched. Looking through the photos brought back a flood of memories: family vacations, holiday gatherings, moments where we all looked happy. For a moment, I felt that familiar pull to go back and try to recapture that sense of belonging. But as I went through the album more carefully, I noticed something unsettling. In almost every picture, I was in the background or off to the side, while Noah was front and center. The album was filled with dozens of pictures of Noah's soccer games and school events, but there were none from my art shows or writing contests. It was like flipping through a visual summary of my entire childhood. Even in this attempt to reconnect, they couldn't see me as my own person, separate from Noah. That album was a stark reminder of why I left. I packed it away in a closet and haven't looked at it since. Noah has visited me a few times over the past few months, and it's been refreshing to reconnect with him away from our parents' influence. He's starting to seriously think about college and has confided in me that he's not sure he wants to follow the path they've laid out for him. Last week, he mentioned he's considering taking a gap year to travel and figure out what he really wants. "I don't want to wake up in 10 years and realize I've been living someone else's life," he told me. I'm supporting him as much as I can, encouraging him to explore his own interests and options. I know our parents will probably blame me for corrupting him, but I also know he deserves to live his life on his terms. The most unexpected development came recently when my aunt, Carol, my mom's younger sister, reached out to me. Growing up, Aunt Carol and I were never particularly close. She lives in another state, and we'd only see her once or twice a year. But she told me she'd noticed the tension in our family and wanted to hear my side of things. When I explained everything, she was horrified. "I always thought something was off," she said, "but I never realized it was this bad." She opened up about her own struggles with my mom when they were younger. Apparently, my mom always had to be the perfect one in their family, which led to a lot of resentment between them. Carol has become an unexpected ally. She's been advocating for me with the rest of the family and has even offered to help me find an internship in graphic design at her company. It means so much to have another adult family member not only validate my experiences but actively support me. My friendship with Lily remains as strong as ever. She's been my rock through all of this. Last month, when I was feeling particularly low about my family situation, she organized a chosen family dinner with her parents and a few of our close friends. It was a warm, loving evening and a powerful reminder that family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who show up for you and care about your well-being. I've also been channeling my emotions into my art. I recently started an online shop to sell some of my designs. It's not making much money yet, but it feels good to be putting my work out there. My grandmother bought one of my prints and proudly displays it in her living room, which means the world to me. Looking back over the past year, I'm amazed at how much has changed. There are still tough days. Sometimes I'll hear a song or catch the scent of a dish that reminds me of home, and I'll be hit with a wave of nostalgia and self-doubt. But those moments pass, and overall, I feel stronger and more confident in myself. I'm learning to build a life on my own terms, surrounded by people who genuinely care about my happiness and well-being. It's not the family I was born into, but it's the family I've chosen. For now, that's enough.